What's up YouTube, this is Ringo from Sphere, and today we are going to go over TOK 2018 question 3. So, yes, we're finally pushing forward. We're up to question 3 now. I've decided to record question 1, 2, and 3 all in one, like on the same day. Question 4, 5, and 6 I actually haven't looked at yet in detail. So, and I mean, this question 3, you learn that, a lot of them, I kind of just think of it on the spot. I did look at the question. I was actually at the dentist this morning trying to figure out this question, and then I got distracted. Anyhow, so we are going to go over question 3 of the TOK. Before we do that, remember to hit that subscribe button, like button, leave me a comment, say hi if you know me, say hi even if you don't know me either. So let's get to it. Without the assumption of the existence of uniformities, there can be no knowledge. Discuss this claim with reference to 2 areas of knowledge. Wow. I think that, this question, it's not easy. Yeah, when I say it's not easy, it just means it's not easy. It's not hard. It's not easy. Because, I mean, if you're a sciencey person, that would be no problem. You would have no issue with this. So, let's talk about some words first. Where's my highlighter? Highlighter? Ugh, come on. So, the first word you look at, assumption. Okay. Second word, uniformity. Third, no knowledge. Let's get our thoughts straight first. So without assumption, what are assumptions? Assumptions are preconditioned, predisposed, whatever is in your head, ideas that you already have about something. You have an idea that things are uniform. Well, what is uniform? You go to school wearing uniform. If you do, uniform means same. They all look the same. Yeah, there can be no knowledge. So yeah, I know it was a really bad interpretation of the question. So I'm just gonna use my own examples to teach you guys. Okay, so the question is asking, is it possible to even have knowledge without understanding or assumption that there is a rule? What does that mean? It means that, is it possible to have knowledge without uniformity? What did I just say? I'm not saying it again. Let me just make this very clear to you. How many times have you asked the teacher, is this going to be on the exam? Is this going to be marked? Okay. Is there a way I should structure my essay? Is there a way to get an answer? Is there a method in order to carry out a research to get the answer? So what I'm saying is that we always try to simplify stuff by setting a uniformity to it, by setting up some ideas that, some rules in which we have to follow. And we assume that everything follow that rule. And when we do, we are able to generate knowledge. Yeah, I think that was more clear, but I know you guys don't think so. So let's give you a solid example. In the areas of natural science, we always have assumptions, because that assumption is called what? That assumption is called a hypothesis. And when we have the hypothesis, where the hell does this hypothesis come from? Well, it's because that we expect sometimes some things to follow some rule, and we want to find that out. Therefore, we have this assumption, we have this hypothesis that it's going to work. And because of this, we're able to prove, we're able to prove whether it works. And that's where the knowledge comes in. So what this question is asking is that if we don't have hypothesis, if we don't have any ideas in how things work or how things will work, then therefore we can't form new knowledge. So this is a very, very classical deductive reasoning argument where we have an assumption and that assumption should fit for everything, and without that we can't test whether it does. So yeah. So I gave you the example. I mean, natural science, you could say yes, it's very true without assumption, without the hypothesis of the existence of uniformity. The method, the empirical method we use, whenever you write a scientific report, a psychology report, or any sort of science, actually, it's not just natural science, even in human science, when we write such report, we always follow a specific format. And that format can be counted as uniformities. Because we know that, in a peer-reviewed journal, you have to follow this, validity, reliability, replicability, generalizability. You have to follow all these before people accept what you said is actually knowledge. Yes, that's very true for human science and natural science. Well, welcome to the world of TOK. We have to argue the other side, where maybe, just maybe, knowledge can be formed without uniformity nor assumption. Is that even possible? You don't assume anything, but knowledge is formed. Let's get to it. So the first idea is not all areas of knowledge requires uniformity. Well, the first word is, what is uniformity? Being the same. Being the same what? Being the same approach, using the same way of knowing. Uniformity, it's very broadly defined. It can be broadly defined by you. So if you define uniformity as a rule, well, let me tell you, rule always have exception, right? So if you want to do law in the future, you'll learn, especially like contract law, there will be, rules, but then there will also be exception of such rule. So, uniformity might not exist in all areas of knowledge due to the idea that there is always exception. And how do we know that there is exception? Well, there will always be exception, but those exceptions may not be discovered yet. Okay? It doesn't mean if things doesn't fit, it's wrong. It just means that if things doesn't fit, it just doesn't support that rule, but it doesn't necessarily means it's wrong. Look at you guys. You guys, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are pretty rebellious. When your teacher says A, you do B. When they say C, you do D. How many times, in school, when you're asked to do something and you want to do something unique, and, it doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean you don't form new knowledge, it just means that it's not the method that they want you to form knowledge at. Can you see where I'm heading? So, for example, if you go to school, uniform, girls in school, they have to wear, dress. And then a lot of them like to, roll up their dress to make it shorter, or, the button shirt, they like to button it one button less to make them look sexier. The guys like to untuck their shirt to make themselves look cooler. And, sometimes you untuck the whole thing, sometimes you untuck one side, which I find actually quite ugly. Just untuck the whole thing looks better. But anyhow, so it doesn't require uniformity all the time. But we can still produce knowledge. Uniformity creates a platform for the transmission of knowledge, such as learning. Yes, this is where, me as an educator idea comes in. A lot of the time, initially, when we learn knowledge, not exactly produce knowledge, but learn knowledge at school, the teacher tells us that you need to do this and this and this. In a math textbook, you practice question 1 A, B, C to L or K. want you to apply some sort of uniformities in the idea of that knowledge. So in the process of learning, I think uniformity is reasonable. I wouldn't say it's right or wrong, but it's reasonable because, when you learn knowledge, you want to learn it easier. You want to learn rules. Students writing essay, why is it that introduction you always have to define yada yada yada? So we try to fit it in. Is that the only way you can write an essay? Of course not. But just to make your life easier and to make a teacher's life easier, we tell you that it's uniform. That's one thing. In the areas of natural science, human science, it can be said that people are always trying to find rules and exceptions. Kind of mentioned that. This is true for the hypothesis in scientists generating. They could be seen as assumption or proven or disproven. So yeah, that's pretty much what I said earlier. So is it obvious that the idea of deductive reasoning, or it is obvious, and that deductive reasoning requires uniformity assumption? But inductive reasoning, do they? I mean, what's inductive reasoning? Well, you see a phenomenon and then you work backwards to find why. Does that require uniformity? Well, no, because it could be a correlation. If you learn about different research method, correlation doesn't mean causation, and hence that there is no uniformity. We can suggest that people behave in a certain way, and this factor is X and Y is correlated, but we really can't say it's uniform, and it is hard to count. It's hard to count the statement, but it's also possible that the discovery of knowledge, uniformity is not necessary, but to make sense of knowledge, it might be. So if Einstein or Newton had an assumption about uniformity, and when things doesn't fit that assumption or that rule, if they discarded those ideas, E equals mc squared would not have been invented. Would not have been discovered. Because many scientists, or just a lot of people, they think outside the box. You teach now you to think outside the box. That's where this is. If you always put things in uniformity, you're not going to be able to spot new knowledge. So a lot of the new knowledge is that we try to avoid assumption. We try to get rid of all our assumption and to look at it in different perspective. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very difficult and very challenging question if you're arguing for the other side, because you need to be able to understand that, without assumption, that's where knowledge can grow, but assumption makes learning knowledge a lot easier. So keep that in mind, because I think that's pretty tricky, and I think this has been quite a long video. You guys might have to kind of watch it in slow mode a few times before you actually understand what I'm saying. But that is this question. Would I avoid it? Yeah, I would avoid this question. Question 3, yeah, it's quite a nasty one to write, and the terms are actually quite difficult to define. So yeah, if you can avoid it, it's not the worst one out of all 6 of them, but unless you're very keen, then I suggest 1 or 2 is a safe bet. Anyhow, hit that subscribe button, like my video, and leave me a comment and find me later. So this is it for now. I will upload question 4, 5, and 6 sometimes next week when I actually have a little bit more time due to public holiday. So peace out for now. This is Ringo from Edsphere.